Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Hi, this is Zak from Washington, D.C. Today we're talking with David Gallo here on Light Talk.
And this is David, coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers. Well, welcome everyone to episode 225.
Is it episode 225
It's
or 226?
225. No, it's 225.
Okay. Sorry about that.
It's 225.
You gotta leave all that in.
What's I think
gotta
people
leave
know
all that
already.
It just seems like it was episode 2, just a short 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. About 5 years ago, it was episode 2.
I was only 12.
That's true. And you
I was only 50.
Oh, well, you're the youngins. You're the youngins.
Yes.
Because Steve and I are a lot older than that. Anyway, we're going to tell you, we have David Gallo on today, production designer David Gallo. And what a thrill it is. I mean, you know, we've only had one other set designer on, and that was Neil Jampolis. So, I mean, we pretty much populate our guests with lighting and projection designers. And it's wonderful that we got David Gallo on to talk to everybody. And hopefully we'll be talking a little bit about how he deals with, these weird lighting designers and projection designers and how they've sort of bother him and annoy him. So that'll be very interesting as well. But before we get started, let's have Zak tell us a little bit about David.
David Gallo is an award-winning scenic designer and visual storyteller whose work has appeared in dozens of cities around the world. He has designed over 30 Broadway plays and musicals, including The Drowsy Chaperone, for which he won the Tony Award, Xanadu, Memphis, The Mountaintop, Thoroughly Modern Millie. He's a longtime collaborator of the famed playwright August Wilson and designed many of Wilson's world premieres both on and off Broadway. His work with the Blue Man Group has been seen in New York, Boston, Chicago, and Las Vegas. He is the production designer for Sesame Street, for which he won 2 Emmy Awards. He also designed Jerry Seinfeld's Netflix special, 23 Hours to Kill. David has designed tours for family entertainment, including Madagascar Live, Yo Gabba Gabba, Dora the Explorer, Blue's Clues, Super Y, and more. And he has designed extensively in Europe and Asia as well. He is also the creative director for the band Phish's legendary New Year's Eve shows. And most importantly, David is the proud and loving father of 2 daughters, August and Citizen, who inspire everything he does.
Well, that was very well done.
Zak knows how to do these things. It's really impressive.
Zachary forgot to mention the one statistic is that I've known him since 1980.
Yes.
Zak?
Well, that's not.
Yes.
I didn't know if that's part of your bio. Yeah.
Was he 7 at the time?
You guys were in elementary school together.
I was 7.
Somewhere around there.
Didn't David babysit you or something like that?
He did. He was our babysitter. David took us to see the movie Back to the Future when it was a new movie in theaters.
Whoa, that's fantastic. Wow.
It was life-changing, I'm sure.
It was life-changing. And did you go to Back to the Future 2 as well?
No, he was already in college by then, I think.
Okay.
We had to move on to his sister as babysitter.
Oh, all right. Well, okay. Listen, first of all, what an amazing career you've had, David, and deservedly won all these awards. And, you designed for one of my favorite bands, Phish, which I absolutely adore. Phish. Yeah. The lighting designer for Phish.
Chris Kuroda.
What an amazing designer. I mean, really.
Yeah, that's a real talent.
You talk about being able to do improvisational design. It's just beautiful. I saw their concert here in LA about 5 years ago. It was his birthday. And I know the band asked him what songs he wanted them to play that night.
Nice.
I don't know if they did it or not, but that's what I heard. But what a beautiful, beautiful band. But okay, I got to ask you one question. Xanadu.
Oh, yeah.
Was it really as bad as the song?
No, it was very good.
It was a big hit, right?
Well, no, it was not a big hit. There's been 2 productions in my life where the director came to me and said, listen, we're going to do this thing. It's not very good. It's completely cliched. We're all going to make a lot of money. And in both cases, the shows failed in their run, but they were huge critical successes. and Xanadu was a pretty big critical success. It was a very, very Douglas Carter Bean wrote a really, really tight, funny script, and Chris Ashley directed a really amazing production and kept it tight, and the design was fun, and it looked great, and it was great, but it just people didn't like the movie. Nobody bought it.
Yeah. I think the song killed it. That famous song was called Xanadu. I think that cursed everything after it.
I don't know. I mean, maybe the music was, the Jeff Lynne tunes were a real draw, but there was also this really weird thing where the contractually, for every Jeff Lynne song we used, we had to use a song by the other guy. The movie was composed by two different people, so it was like you wanted to put in this completely kick-ass, Jeff Lynne tune. Right. And you go, okay, what are we gonna do? We'll be stuck with some other song. So,
That's unfortunate. I feel bad for the other guy. You're going against Jeff Lynne.
Yeah, well, I'm sure he did just fine.
Yeah, the other guy was happy that he got to be included.
It could have been Burt Bacharach for all I know. I don't know who it was. But yeah, that was a good little show, and that tiny little theater is always a joy to work in. It was funny because the play itself takes place in a dilapidated theater, and we were the very first show in the Helen Hayes after it had been completely renovated. So that was kind of a drag. We originally actually tried to do it with the seats on stage and used the empty, because all the seats in the house were gone, and so we had this idea where we would put all the seats on the stage and roller skate around the empty orchestra, but we couldn't get the seat count.
Was this a roller skate show?
Yeah, Xanadu's about his roller disco.
Oh,
and Zak did the projections. He's being quiet. He
doesn't want to mention stories on that show.
I'm happy to mention it. I mean, the one thing that I will say about the music is David, not David Gallo, the other David, you'll understand this, that they had a 3-piece band. And when I say 3 pieces, it was guitar, keyboards, and drums. So no bass.
All right. And well, the keyboard player played bass, right?
Yes, and it was kind of weak most of the time. And one day, the keyboard player brought in a bass, and it was like a totally different band.
Oh, so he played bass on some of the songs. Okay, got it.
But he never played bass in the actual show. It's just one day he brought it in. I talked to the musical director years later, and he was like, yeah, we thought it'd be fun to see what it sounded like with bass, but they didn't want to pay for it. Yeah, the music was very thin. But I think the beauty of it was that the whole show, it was the perfect amount of, as my dad would say, of winking at the audience. We know this is ridiculous, but we're going to act super duper serious. And so just go with it and it'll be fun for everybody.
All right. So it wasn't like Starlight Express roller skates. It was something else.
No, there was no adventure. She looked like she was going to fall over half the time. It was skate on, skate around in a circle. I mean, we're talking about the Helen Hayes Theater, which is pretty damn small.
Right. There wasn't a lot of room to build up speed.
We ended up actually putting the audience on stage.
Right.
So we took up all the room for, a couple of rows on stage. So that was our backdrop. So that took up, more than half the depth we had. So yeah, she just sort of skated around. And Tony Roberts had in his contract that he wouldn't get on skates.
Oh, well, that's understandable. So is this roller derby?
No, it's a wacky little fable where a brilliant young artist needs a project, and this muse decides to take him on, and she is the actual goddess, and the goddess, they discover this decrepit disco, and they want to turn it into a roller disco. That's the great artwork that he's creating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So David Jacques, why are you pretending that you didn't go roller disco growing up?
I never did a roller.
We all knew that you did.
I played the roller discos. I played them. I was in the band. Come on. I played all that, roll them up.
Do you guys have a bass
roll
player?
Them up. Yes, we had a bass player with very loud
bass player. One funny thing about that show is we had every mirror ball in North America.
Right, it's true. There was a shortage after us.
Yeah, we rented everyone we could find, and some of them were gigantic. And so the very big end at the disco, this star drop made of mirror balls flies in. but over the entire audience. I shouldn't say star drop. It was pretty cool.
Right. That's where we spent all the money.
Wow.
Yeah, that's where the money went.
On mirror balls.
Hey man, I have 7 mirror balls in my studio right now. I seriously do. I have mirror balls on clips, and I just move them around the studio and clip them on
Very
things.
exciting.
See, and I have the Vornado fan that we use to blow her hair around.
Oh, do you really?
I do.
Oh, wow.
See, everyone gets to keep something.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it wasn't years of royalties.
So, speaking of royalties, what kind of exposure did you have as far as theater is concerned when you were growing up, David?
Not as much as I would have liked.
Yeah.
I saw one piece of theater. I grew up overseas until I was 10, right?
Oh, really?
So,
Where overseas, may I ask?
In mostly in Spain and Germany.
Oh, that's nice.
Those are the military thing,
Yeah.
So I remember being taken to like a weird children's opera in Spain, which was my first live theater experience, which I do remember vividly. So it must have been an impression. But other than that, I remember productions here and there, but I was not an avid theater goer. When Cats came out, it was touted as such a big deal, and I had already had a very strong interest in theater and was doing theater with Zak's dad, my high school art teacher and theater teacher, that she sent me to Cats like it was like a thing, like a fairy tale. She pulled all the bean money and sent her son to Cats. I really remember it vividly. And then started seeing more in second acting shows, and it picked up, and saw as much as I could. But I was not exposed. I was not one of those kids that's was brought to the theater every month.
That's interesting. So Cats was a huge influence on you.
No, it wasn't at all. It was just a thing that you had to see.
Yeah.
It was. You remember that this was. I mean, you guys remember? It was hyped as a reinvention of the art form. Both.
Really?
Well, yeah, okay, but it was the way that it was being sold. It was the first mega musical on our shores, and scenically, there were a lot of press about they had to dig into Manhattan bedrock and move steel and rip out the proscenium. And at the time, that seemed sort of impossible. But then I've done shit like that since then. But it was a big deal. But it didn't. It didn't really stick with me.
Well, I know, David, you're from that generation where Star Wars kind of changed the way people looked at movies and what they could be about. And I think, you've said you've had some interest in filmmaking. So do you remember having a light bulb moment where you kind of decided that live theater was going to be your thing?
Well, Star Wars was my first and biggest influence. I did a lot of learning and copying they did this cool thing where they published books, about the art department archives. And so I got these books when I was a kid, this amazing movie, and I was able to look at pictures of concept art and set sketches and props and scripts and, floor plans of studios. And so that, got me more and more focused toward film. And then when I got into high school, I met Zak's dad, who introduced me to theater, live theater. And frankly, there were just people involved, and I just fell in love with the whole process and fell in love with the musicals and the music and just everything about being in a theater, grabbed me.
I think one of your early experiences with throwing body parts on stage and Pippin, right?
Yeah. We did Pippin, which I
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing to me that was my first experience, and it was so good. It was really for a kids production and all of that. It was very, very good.
Kind of spoiled you. Having a great
Everything
show
spoiled me. The first Broadway musical I ever worked on was The Who's Tommy.
No.
I mean, talk about spoiled. All the ones I did after, I was like, where are all the groupies? Where's all that? How come this show jacket's boring? Nobody notices it at all.
You get old parts from Miami Beach.
I know,
not the young groupies.
Yeah, I'm just jiving, but Tommy, a rock and roll tour was pretty amazing for a first experience.
You just miss those dancing cats.
Yeah. I can't believe that I can't believe that show closed.
I know. Now and forever, as they say.
I know. It lasted a long time. And then I can't believe they put the Winter Garden back together.
That's true. They had to fumigate it, is what I've heard.
I remember that Cats was the first show where I was aware of the whole idea of the pit orchestra was in a room somewhere else and everything was just piped in.
That's right. They didn't have the live orchestra on stage, did they?
Right. They had it somewhere else. Because of the cat allergies.
Cats was like a metaphor for the decline of the American theater. I worked on the arena tour. They decided that selling it in the theaters wasn't enough, so we're going to tour it to different arenas around the country. Seemed like a good idea. But, the first night, when Green Eyes goes up, it's an arena. So all of a sudden the cats are being grabbed and held by the audience. They won't let them go. The stage manager comes up on the PA system and says, "Please release the cats. Please let the cats return to the stage." And that, all of a sudden, that's a different world with hot dogs and cheese nachos in the arena. It was like a tour from hell.
Well, yeah. Working in an arena, it's its own unique thing. Things like that you never think of. They just happen.
Well, why don't you tell us about your early experience as a professional designer? I mean, did you have a show that you would consider your big break? I mean, was it Pippin?
Pippin was in 9th grade.
Pippin was in 9th grade.
That was my big break.
Zak was in it.
Was he really?
I did a show called Machinal, which has become much more popular, but it was super obscure. 1927 sort of noirish.
It's a fantastic
crime thriller.
Piece. Fantastic.
It really is, and it's brilliantly structured, and it's got so much about it that's appealing. And I did a production of it at a tiny little theater in the Village, and it was directed by Michael Greif, who is now one of our most fabulous and famous directors. But it was, done by young Michael Greif and myself, and Ken Posner did the lights, and so it was a huge success. It became sort of the ticket to get. It was standing room only, and then we moved to the public, so we did it at the public. And a couple of weird things came out of it. I got invited to a cocktail party at Gracie Mansion, and I got invited to the Drama Desk Awards because I got nominated, but I didn't have any clothing I could wear.
So what did you wear?
I didn't go.
You didn't go? Oh, no, man, you should have gone. You could have figured something out.
Yeah. And
you would have been cool.
Yeah,
you're the kind of guy that would dress really cool. You wouldn't go into tux.
Well, I would do it now without thinking about it, but at the time, So anyway, Machinal was. Oh, and then the other weird thing happened was Robert. This is crazy. Robert Brustein wrote a book called Reimagining the American Theater, right, which is like a big textbook in college now, and I'm in the index. Like he mentioned me in the book.
That's great.
That was the one thing I couldn't believe. It was my first crack out, and I'm like, oh look, Robert Brustein, who was still the head of Yale, just mentioned me casually in this book. So that production led to a lot. There was more work came out of it, more recognition. The reviews were stellar. So that would be the break show.
That's a great show. That's a show I would like to see on Broadway. I mean, I'm not really big for all the musicals and all that stuff, but a show like Machinal, designed and approached in a very, creative way and interesting, which a great script and great acting opportunities. I would love to see that. There's
definitely cool ways to do it, and there's so many different ways to do it. I collect scenic designs, like I collect, original renderings and sketches and drawings and all kinds of stuff from, going back to, turn of the century. And I actually have one of Robert Edmund Jones's 1927 Machinal sketches.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, the reason this is impressive is because I bought it from a guy who didn't know what it was.
Yeah, right.
That's the very Antiques Roadshow.
It was, yeah, man. It was framed, and it had gotten misfiled. I mean, it was at a gallery of Jones and I mean of Milziner's work,
Wow.
and it had when you leaned the frame back, you could see that it
Yeah.
was Jones, and I was like, "Say,
Do you guys know Peter Harrison? He's a set designer in New York,
yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, and I was working with him in Central City one year in Central City Opera, and that is a theater that Robert Edmund Jones actually rebuilt. He basically came
wow,
with his whole group from Broadway, and he did summer theater there for a number of years. And one day Peter comes to me, he goes, "I got to show you something." We go into this building, we go all the way up to the top floor, and there's these flat files, and he opens up a flat file, and in that flat file were all original Jones sketches and drawings. I
holy
couldn't
crow!
believe it. And we just looked at each other saying, should we just grab this? I said, no. So, I mean, it was tempting, let me tell you. But we obviously told the people who were in charge of the theater, and they framed them, and they're now up in the theater in all protective cases.
Oh, how cool!
And it's beautiful. Costume sketches, set sketches, the whole bit. It's just amazing. So,
That's
yeah, Jones
wild.
is pretty cool.
Okay, so we've got the question that it shows up all the time when we have a guest on here. Uh, do you approach designing plays and musicals the same way?
I approach everything the same way, which is to say that I don't want to go into anything with any preconceived notions. I think that one of the things that I've had within me that has been successful is that I start every project, anew. Uh, that's not really the answer to your questions, but to answer the question, yes, I do. I approach them all exactly the same. I can't think of what the difference for me would be. Musical has a lot more music. It has dance. It has a lot more elements, let's say, or traditionally would. But the process that I do is the same regardless.
Do you feel like you at this point have like a formula? So like you get the script and how you're going to break it down, and that it's just sort of like it's a routine at this point?
It is not that way. It's becoming more so. I've partnered with another person, and through her, I've become much more organized in that is that which versions of things, just designing stuff methodically and not sort of allowing the design to develop in a more methodical way, I guess I would say.
I don't know. You came down to the Dallas Theater Center a few years ago, and you came by and spoke to our students. And I noticed, I came in, and you had converted our classroom into a gigantic living storyboard. There was brown paper on all four walls. There was a whole journey of the play, a whole script analysis. I mean, it was kind of amazing to see your process being laid out.
Yeah, that was an opportunity. They had generously flown me out to be a part of the workshop um, that that Patricia McGregor had put together. And yet I was only there for a day or two, 2 days at the most. And so I thought, what can my contribution be? The play has that sort of linear year by year by year kind of work to it, kind of quality to it. Well, it's literally structured that way, right? Every 10 years or so. And so I thought, well, what can I do? I have an intern and me. And so we decided just to do this elaborate collage of the timeline of the play. And it was all very just off the cuff. It was all very just very very liberating to do, and it sort of became the key piece in the room for that workshop. So I guess it was there when I spoke to the students.
Our next question is, can you describe your process for collaborating with a lighting designer on a project? And how do you think about light and what the lighting might be when you're designing scenery?
When I'm working with the lighting designer, my work begins with them really very much from the beginning. As soon as there's a ground plan that's established, we start working on where we're going to put the lights. I have to remain flexible, but I really early on want to get in how we're going to illuminate this thing. Where is the light going to come from? What color possibilities do we have? What is the quality of light that's going to come out of it? And so a good lighting designer will work with me over the course very early in the design process in order to establish all of those things in time for tech rehearsal. Once we get to tech rehearsal, of course, they have to be able to do their own thing, and I should back off a little bit, but that's not always the easiest thing to do. I think I get along with lighting designers very, very well. I think that I appreciate what they do tremendously, and not just like I appreciate it. I mean, like I appreciate them for saving my butt, which is pretty much, goes on every minute of every day when you're in tech. So I would say that I've been fortunate to work with a lot of really great people, and I've been, generally pleased with what it is that they do.
Could you give us a few names of people that you've worked with that you really enjoy?
The ones you've enjoyed.
Yeah, the ones, Don't tell us about the ones you don't like. Okay.
That's a different show.
So, lighting designers that I've particularly enjoyed working with are the ones that I was able to do multiple shows. Mm-hmm. And so when I first started, I did a tremendous number of shows with Ken Posner.
Right.
I also did a tremendous number of shows with Don Holder. The two of them together.
Great.
Yeah,
back when they were unknown.
Together lived.
Yeah, right.
I would not say they were unknown, but they were certainly on their way to such great success.
Sure.
And I did many productions with the two of them, so that put me in a position of having most of my shows designed by two people. So we were able to build a rapport and a working relationship that became very important to me. Very, very tight and close, like I was describing earlier. I did a number of shows with Howell Binkley, and always really adored working with Howell. He brought something unique to every production. His texts were the most interesting, and he had one of the most beautiful color palettes. I just did a show with Jane Snow a couple of years ago, and really enjoyed working with her. It was a play. It was a play that I was much more familiar with, having done it several other times, and her lovingly crafting something that was for an August Wilson play, and becoming a part of that group and crafting something so lovingly is quite an accomplishment. So I would say Jane is somebody that I've really enjoyed working with as well.
It's really interesting because we're sort of segueing into the next question, which is basically what kinds of things would you like young lighting designers to know more about in order to have a successful collaboration? But I was thinking about something we talked about on the show a few weeks ago about why directors hire certain lighting designers. And of course, a lot of it has to do with the set designer, because usually the set designer is one of the first people the director decides on who to hire. And it would be like, okay, David, who would you like to be, to light the show? Or I'm thinking about having Zak light the show. What do you think of Zak? Is there anything besides the artistic quality of the designer's work that's maybe moves more into personality that attracts you as a collaborator? Does personality make a big difference when it comes to selecting a lighting designer?
Yeah, I think personality is very important. You've got a person that's sitting in that chair for hours and hours and hours a day. You only have so many days to get it. Their ability to remain cool, their ability to continue to work with you under the pressure that they're under. There's a temperament that is, I think, required for the job. And although artistic standards for me are probably higher than they should be, I will always make the best artistic choices, which aren't always the healthiest choices, if you know what I mean. But I think that, like I say, I think the temperament for the LD is critical.
I agree with you. I mean, I think that's a really very important thing, because we all know lighting designers, or just theater people who have great personalities for the theater. They may not be the most artistically, strong people, but they know how to put a show up, and they know how to do it in a painless way. And I think that's a big point, right?
I think the relationship between the scenic designer and lighting designer in some ways is almost different than the lighting designer's relationship with every other designer and member of the creative team, because
even the director,
to a certain extent, when we get into the theater and it's time to start focusing the lights and moving things around, the majority of the scenery is built and it's there, and you can still make changes, but like it's not that same kind of malleable thing like lighting or projections or costumes or blocking or choreography. And so there, the more of a, trust and good feeling that you have with your collaborator, I think the easier it is to navigate that relationship where, that person is probably working nonstop with, holding up the little telephone to their ear and looking at you and smiling and saying, yes, what can I do for you? So I can see how that's, challenging and different than for like me as a projection designer working with a lighting designer, where we're both kind of going nonstop at the same time.
What other qualities would you think a young lighting designer needs to have to, have a successful collaboration with the set designer?
Like if you could make your own, if you could mold and shape your own student, what would you want them to know?
Yeah.
I think that for me, the difficulties of being a young designer is you're taught that art has no rules, and then you're taught a whole bunch of rules. And the thing that I like to see in somebody is that they realize that we're invincible, that what it is that we're going to create is going to be, majestic, and we don't have to get too concerned or bogged down too early with what's possible or not possible. When I worked in Blue Man, it was the greatest education for me, because at Blue Man, nobody ever concerned themselves with how we were going to do something. And we always knew that we were going to be able to do it. No one ever said we can't do this, that, or the other thing. We always figured out a way. And that followed me into all of the theater work too. And I think that that's the quality that I would look for is a fearlessness from someone. We will get this done and journey with me in a fearless way.
Well, let's talk about that journey. I mean, it's no secret you've had a really successful collaboration over the years with August Wilson. How did that begin?
Wow, that just began simply. Marion McClinton, who I had just done a Lorraine Hansberry play with, was looking for a set designer for Jitney, and this was when Jitney was a regional theater production. It was going to be at the Huntington Theater, and he ran me by August, and August said okay, because I'd done a production of Fences once before, and I ended up designing that production of Jitney, which ran all over the place. That's probably my most successful play. It was in fact, it definitely was. It was done all over, including in the National Theatre of Great Britain. So it played many regional theaters all over. It played off Broadway. It didn't play Broadway initially. But through that, I became part of the team. August was a funny thing because he wasn't that into abstraction. So when I built the first model for Jitney and I had to send it to him, he called the director and was like, I don't know, some of this is a little weird. And Marion, the director, said, trust me on this, trust me. And by the time we opened in Boston, August grabbed Marion and said, make sure we get this guy for the next one. So, I make sure we get this guy for the next one for years, and led from play to play to play to play to play. But I mean, I was at the point where I was designing productions where, he was describing them to me. He hadn't written them yet. So that relationship included a lot of weird stuff.
That's amazing.
It was a cool thing to be a part of. I mean, we're August Wilson family. I named my daughter August and my other daughter Citizen.
Yes,
Yeah.
I noticed that.
I say August makes sense. She was born first, and then Citizen is named after my second favorite August Wilson character. And the reason for that is because my favorite is Solly Two Kings. I couldn't name a kid Solly.
No. It's too many syllables. Too many syllables.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's be clear. You could have. You simply chose not to.
You wisely chose not to.
It's so weird when you have a kid and they hand you that piece of paper and you realize you could write anything on it.
You see, this is why I never had a kid, because I did not want to have to make that decision.
It's my wife was like, in recovery, and she was out of it for days. And I went to there like, I could write anything on this thing.
And she'll kill me. What did you name our daughter? Oh my God.
So, David, your work has expanded far beyond the traditional stage over the last few decades, and you're the production designer of Sesame Street. You're the creative director for Fish for their New Year's concerts. You've done the Netflix special with Jerry Seinfeld. Do you have any advice for young designers who are looking to move beyond traditional theater?
I think that the whole industry is moving beyond traditional theater. Traditional theater still exists, but people are evolving into other art forms very quickly. And I think, other aspects of live events and that sort of thing. The more rock concerty, a Broadway musical gets, the more people that go work on rock concerts. And I think that immersive theater has done amazing things to just realign people's heads into thinking of other possibilities for their lives. There's so much works going on, in something that's immersive, that I think that it makes you realize that, what the possibilities are endless. Working in television is its own thing. I did Sesame because they knew me from 2008, and they called me, because they knew I had a whimsical aesthetic. That was something they were looking for, and they knew that from me. So I was brought in specifically because of things I had done. So TV is its own pursuit, I think I would have to say. But, rock and roll is out there. Immersive theater is out there. I just made a movie, it's like there's so many different things that you can do.
That is really cool. What's the movie?
The movie we just made, it's called Fat Life. It tells the story of a couple who live a life of difficulty and pain and sorrow because of morbid obesity. And ultimately and it's their whole lives. Like, they're born at the beginning, and then they get married, and they can't have a child until they lose weight. And so it's the story of them losing weight. It's a short film. It's silent. It's a silent musical. It's like,
that sounds really interesting, actually.
Yeah, it's like, I call it silent musical because it's scored top to bottom.
Sure.
I had an incredible musician named Peter Buffano. And Peter wrote, and I worked, talking process. The music was written before I wrote, while I was drawing the storyboards. The music was inserted as the thing was being written. And so we had a complete score by the time I, finished the script. And so it's got a lot of dance numbers in it, but they're not hoofer numbers, like I've got a pas de deux between two people with ice cream cones, and I've got a ballet with two people in an empty crib. It's very pretty. So it's a cool little movie. We're shopping it out to film festivals right now. We got accepted. Yeah, we're doing pretty well on that so far, actually.
So were you the production designer on the movie?
No, I was the writer and director.
Oh my God, I didn't know.
I was the writer director. The credits say that I was the writer, director, designer, and editor, which is actually all very true. But it was like a big, real movie. I had a budget, I had crews, I had sets, like it was, I guess it's, in this day and age, you have to say it was a real movie. But
it's a real movie. You were very busy. You were very busy on this show.
Well, yeah, I was. But like, it all takes place in a circus tent, like a 20-foot diameter, muslin circus tent, the entire movie.
Wow.
And then all the scenery and all of the other actors are in shadow. It's silhouette.
The more you talk about this film, the more I want to see it.
You gotta. It's great. I can't show it to anybody yet.
Right, of course. That hit the festivals. That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm very excited about it.
How about lighting technology? Because you've been in the business for a while now, and you've seen technology change quite a bit in lighting.
I was the very first person to use RGB LEDs on Broadway.
Were you really?
That's
wow.
right.
There you go.
It was, here's how this went down. It was all of these enormous stainless steel cutouts of city ground rows that all were internally lit. And I was like drawing neon. That was what we used to do back in the day. Draw like 3 colors of neon, and then you'd pray you could mix them. And Don Holder says, "I got this salesman coming over with something I think will work for us. I don't know anything about it." And I go to his place, and there's this sales guy, and he's showing color kinetics. And so we used them, a lot of them.
What show is that on?
That was Thoroughly Modern Millie.
Oh, wow.
So it was a mega budget musical, so
Sure.
it could,
Yeah, you could
it could
afford
handle it. Yeah.
So you like LED?
I am. Well, it's funny. I do photography and I use incandescent sources, but LEDs. Yeah, I do. Anything that's made lights smaller has helped tremendously, and the idea that we can color change almost every light in the plot. The day remember scrollers?
Oh God, I avoided them. I'd rather hang 3 lights and mix those colors.
Yeah,
The scrollers
exactly.
are horrible.
So you had these scrollers in every show, and every time they'd hit the button on them, you hear this racket. So LEDs, the ability to get, RGBW color. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge. My entire studio is LEDs, by the way. I can change the color of every light in the place.
Very cool. And you could tell Alexa to change them, right? You could say, Alexa,
I'm staring at the unsynced Alexa right now.
Oh my God, poor Alexa!
I got to work.
You got to release her into your life, take over your children's lives. But let's talk about the future. I mean, it doesn't have to be just lighting, but also in stagecraft, scenery, and anything that technology. Where do you see the theater going? Where would you like to see the theater go as far as technology is concerned?
Well, as far as technology is concerned, it's funny because things have come so far. Like you were saying earlier, the lights and projection. I mean, I remember, my first show, I still have the Tommy T-shirt, 54 slide projectors, stuck to the back wall of the St. James.
We talked about that.
Yeah, that was my 54. I'll never forget that number. That was my media design. I was the assistant designer. That was our media design for the show, in my beginning of my career. And now, video projections, all of that business. I'm much more interested in, because anything is possible. I firmly believe that if you can imagine it, it exists. Just give me 10 minutes on Google and I'm going to find it.
Right. And it's probably on Amazon for sale.
Yeah, and exactly.
Made in China.
What I have always, so technology has always kept up with where I wanted to go. I've never been in a person, except for the LEDs, saying, what am I going to do here? There's technology's come along for me on a very nice clip. What I've always been more interested in is fabrication process and the tools that are available. When I first saw the CNC router, I knew that was the thing that was going to change design more than anything. Uh-huh. And it did. I mean, it really did. And it was another thing I did on Broadway the first time. But it wasn't my fault for this. The scenery shop, Showman Fabricators, had gotten the contract to build the set. That was their first Broadway show, and they were the only ones that owned one. Anyway, so the CNC router, was the shop that was heard around the world. And now the things that you can do with bending pipe, welding pipe, cutting out pipe, there's automated brakes that can build the most complicated structures you could possibly imagine. I see those things as being truly opening up all sorts of worlds for us. And I like that. I mean, I think that's definitely wonderful that we as theater people can now, I'm talking about big Broadway shows here. I'm sorry, I shouldn't, act like everybody's got this, but scenery shops that can handle these things, and there's a trickle down. There's very few shops now that don't have a CNC router, or not. It's become more affordable anyway.
Do you do a lot of 3D printing, David?
I do a tremendous amount of 3D modeling. I don't do very much 3D printing. I just don't. I'm doing a restaurant right now. I'm writing a restaurant. It's wild. It's wild. It's my wildest experience ever.
I love it.
Literally right. It's an empty room right now, and they're like, I'm Dave Galloing everything in the entire place. I'm not talking about designing it. I'm talking about writing it. Got
Right.
actors and all kinds of crazy shit. Yeah, I do a lot of 3D modeling, and I don't do a lot of 3D printing. I don't. Oh, the reason I mentioned the restaurant is because the costumes are going to be 3D printed.
I saw a couple days ago, they've actually, and they showed it being built, they've actually now built a 3-bedroom house with a 3D printer. I mean, it's this monster machine, and it just, from the ground up, here comes the house.
Yeah. Well, I think they did in one of the more recent James Bond movies. They 3D printed the Aston Martin because it was too valuable to destroy, and you couldn't tell the difference.
No, that's
Yeah.
pretty damn cool.
I mean, I've talked about with Driscoll. I have a very clear memory of having this conversation with Driscoll, who's sometimes on the show, saying, there's going to be a time when you'll be a scenic designer, will be meeting with a director, and the director will go, I wish this model had one more chair, and you'll say, give me 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and that's amazing to hear because nothing was more time consuming than model furniture. And it's
Right.
true.
That's true.
It's absolutely true. That was such a pain in the ass. You'd build this whole model, and you'd be like, great, now we got to build 60 chairs to go in it, And,
Yeah.
and so you didn't, you were like, hey, imagine.
Yeah, there'll
there'll
be
be chairs
59
here.
more of these.
Yeah, exactly.
We have one more question. It's really important, probably more important than any of the questions we've asked so far, is what did you do to Zak to keep him from tearing up the house when you were babysitting
I
him?
was well behaved.
Zak is a really, Zak was a really, mellow kid. He just wanted to
Wow.
play bass. Zak preoccupied himself with two things, if I could remember: the guitar
Yeah.
and an Apple IIe.
That's correct.
Apple IIe.
Who's got a memory?
Yeah.
Apple IIe.
Right. Did you ever have a Commodore 64?
You had a Commodore, I think, right? Or your brother did, David?
My brother had a Commodore
Yeah.
64.
There you go. The Commodore 64. You can't go wrong with that. Well, David, thank you so much for being on the show today. And it's a very
Sure thing.
interesting interview. And I'm sure our listeners are going to love this because just everything you've said has been just so right. I want to see this film. Okay. So
You will. Everybody,
Yes.
believe me, if I have my way, everybody's going to see it.
Right. And what's the name of the film again?
It's called Fat Life, but the word fat is in brackets.
Oh.
Okay. Not
And
PH.
it's given
It's not
given that
PhD.
title. No, and that title is derogatory, but it's done for a reason. You have to. I went out there a little bit on the title because the whole thing. I mean, there's no fat jokes. You write a movie about two morbidly obese people that's funny as hell, and there's no fat jokes. Try it sometime.
This is really going to be interesting. I really want to see this. So everyone check it out. The first festival is coming up when? When's the first festival?
It's the well, I don't know if it's the first, but the first one we were accepted to
Right.
is the Woodstock Film Festival.
And when is that?
But October, sometime. in
Okay,
October.
it's coming up. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
but I don't know how this all works because we've also been applied to Sundance and Toronto, and some of them don't allow you to go to others.
Oh, yes. Like
The
the big
one
ones,
thing I
right?
have is my favor is that now that I made the movie, I've got other people that know what to do with it, which is I've got some really good producers. There was serious money behind this. It came from a pharmaceutical company.
Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Is there
No,
is there a tie-in with a certain prescription drug?
No, there is not. There isn't. But what came with them was a gaggle of doctors, and so I've interviewed and spoken to and worked with some of the greatest minds of bariatric surgery and weight loss and obesity and all those things. Yeah,
Wow. That is so damn cool.
it's pretty cool.
Hey. Well, thanks again, David. And, we're talking about Zak and the bass. He's going to take us out today with that incredible bass playing on the theme song. So the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google, YouTube, livedesignonline.com, Amazon Prime Music, and just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk shenanigans.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you do decide to litigate, the law firm of Flecht, Flock, Flair, and Glare and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Washington, D.C., New York City, and the Lone Star State.
And be sure to join us next week when we talk about even more craziness in our crazy industry.
All that and a new sponsor.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So thanks again to David Gallo for joining us, and we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.